the video that you may want to rewatch. You know, I know you guys love this class so much, it's like reruns, right? Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. Go ahead and open up Excel. How many of you have never ever used Excel in your life?
What if we kind of have, but we don't understand it?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know today, hopefully. In this class, well, I won't teach you everything you need to know today, but in this class, I should teach you everything that you will need to know. But here's what I would recommend. Do as much homework as you can on Excel. You might want to do it on paper, especially for those of you who struggle. It's not a bad idea to do it all twice, okay? So, oh, maybe I should do something.
Which chapter are we doing today?
We're doing chapter 1. We're finally starting at the beginning of the book. Okay? Over here. So, tell you what. Here, I'm not, rather than write on the board, I'm going to put that right in the middle of the board. Oh. I'll just write on here. Okay, so the first term that we're going to learn is individuals. Now, by the way, let me just mention something here really quickly. You'll notice I've got this white cross here, right? Now, you're going to notice your cursor is going to change depending on where you are, okay? So, for example, I can click on that. If I go to the bottom, notice that white square turns into 4 arrows. I could actually click and drag that around anywhere I want, okay? You'll also notice that if I put it on that little black square right there, it turns into a black cross. You can actually click and drag it down, and then that will copy and paste for you all in one step, okay?
Would you wait a little bit?
Well, this is just background information, okay? You don't need to do anything I'm doing right now, but I'm just kind of showing you. Another thing, if you put it in between columns A and B, you'll notice that it changes into a line with 2 arrows. Do you see that? So if you click and drag, you can make that as big or as small as you want. Or if you double click, then it will resize to whatever is the largest in that column. Does that make sense? Also, you can notice here it turns into a down arrow. If you click here, you can select the entire column, or you could select the entire row, as the case may be. Okay? So just some basic things about Excel. Okay? What's that?
I was like, man, I feel stupid, man, because everybody else probably like grew up with this like easily, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Man, I feel like.
So just remember, your first test is, I need to schedule that in the testing center. Hopefully they'll let me schedule that on Wednesday. I'm sure that Thursday is the 4th of July, and they will not let you take the test on Thursday. Hopefully they'll take it Friday. I usually try to keep it open 2 days, so we'll see. Probably it'll be Wednesday and Friday, but I'll let you know tomorrow because I haven't scheduled that test yet. But anyway, yeah, you can take it on Friday, even though we don't have class. If you want to, it's up to you. Okay? Trying to give you a little flexibility. Yes?
Do we have any study guide or something?
Well, we're probably going to have a review day, so we can review everything you want to know. But most of you, well, I won't say most of you, a lot of you who are going to struggle with Excel will probably make a review day where we're going to like, now how do I do that again? How do I make a graph? So we're going to be doing a lot of graphing and things like that. So at any rate, let me just underline this. This is a term here. We're going to talk about individuals. These are objects defined by data. You might want to write that down instead of typing it in, or if you want practice, you can type it in. Okay? Can be people or objects. Okay? We're also going to talk about a variable. Okay, I'll underline that too. This is any characteristic of an individual. Okay, well, maybe we'll make this our vocabulary page. So down here at the bottom, you can notice that it says sheet 1. If you guys want to save this or whatever, maybe we'll call this the vocabulary page, okay? That's probably easier to read than my handwriting, right? Okay. All right, if I click on this plus sign, it will open up a new sheet. Okay, so I want a new sheet. So let's talk about our first data set. I really should update the students in this class, but we've got a name, okay? And then I've got Fiona Apple, Carl Malone, George Bush, Stephen Hawking, and Oprah Winfrey. Okay? Now, I want to resize column A. Do you guys remember how to do that?
Just go to the top.
Put it in between A and B
Click the whole thing.
and double click. Okay? Stephen Hawking is the longest name, so it resizes it so that that fits there. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? So the next thing I'm going to type is major. Fiona's major was music, and Carl's was athletics. George is political science. Wouldn't you like to be in this class? It would be an interesting class, right? Then we got physics and communications. Okay? Once again, I'm going to resize this so that that fits in there nicely. Okay? Column C, I'm going to put in points. And we've got 397, 323, 446, 405, and 461. Okay? Then we've got a grade. And I've got B, C, A, B, A. Okay? All right. So this is just a basic data set. Probably when you guys do your statistical project, you'll probably be using Excel. The tests are going to be done in Excel. Basically, I'll just write a problem on here. You'll probably have 4 or 5 problems. We'll ask you to do certain things. No calculators. You have to do everything in Excel. Okay? So that'll be part 2 of the test. All right. So I'm going to start learning people's names. How about Dalton? Where's Dalton? Dalton, could you tell me what the individuals are?
Yeah.
What are they? Okay, they're all the people in this case, right? Very good. How about, let's talk to Chandler. Chandler, can you tell me what the variables are in this case?
Majors.
Major would be a variable. Grade. And name? I probably wouldn't call the name the variable. Points. So how many variables do I have? 3 variables, right? Okay, so that's not too bad. You like that question on the test, right? Or the quiz tomorrow. Okay. All right, so that'll probably be a good quiz question. Name the variables, name the individuals. Now let me throw something else at you. Let's say, where'd my notes go? Here they are. Let's say that a researcher wanted to know who recycles. Okay, you are the researcher. Okay, so let's pick on, I'm going to start working on names here. I picked on Dalton and I picked on Chandler. It must be Christian's turn. Where's Christian? So Christian, you are in charge. You're a city manager, let's say, and you want to know who recycles, or how much people recycle. Maybe that's what you want. Okay. Would it make sense to, you got a family of 5, and would it make sense to break down how much the dad recycles, the mom, the kids recycle? Would that make sense? Okay. So in a case like that, how would you define an individual?
A household.
A household, okay? Because everybody throws all their stuff in the same garbage can, right? And then, so a household could be considered an individual in that case, okay? What would be the variable? Here, let's pick on, since I already picked on Christian. How about Cade? What would be the variable in that case? You're the coworker with Christian.
Really just what's family number? No, I'm not sure really.
Okay, you want to know how much people recycle? How would you measure that?
By how many households recycle on a block or something?
Well, so, Bettina?
Yes.
So we want to know how much Bettina's family recycles. How would you measure that?
How much is in the trash can or recycling?
How much? So how much? How do I put? Wait, how do I know how much is?
In their can, the size of their can, I don't know.
The size? Everybody's can's the same size, right?
Yeah.
That wouldn't help.
And what would like?
Bettina came up with a number. What'd you say?
I said the weight.
The weight, maybe you'd weigh the trash can? So the weight of the trash can could be perhaps the variable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. We've talked about populations of samples. Let's talk about. We're going to go back to here. More vocabulary for you. We're going to talk about descriptive statistics. Okay. Okay, descriptive statistics are general characteristics of such as weight, age, race, etc. Okay. All right. So, descriptive statistics. Maybe you would want to know the mean weight of a trash can. How much people are recycling? Let's say. So that sort of a thing.
And we're just assuming everyone uses the same trash can, right? It's just a.
Yeah, generally that's what happens in a city. They get the big blue trash cans, right? Everybody uses blue, right? All cities. Anybody seen a non-blue recycling trash can? What's that?
Some of them used to be green.
Green's for regular garbage.
Well, I know, but some of them used to be green because they used to have black trash cans for regular trash and the green used to be for the recycling.
Oh, okay. So I guess they do use different colors. What'd you say? Well, you'd assume all the trash cans weigh the same, so you could weigh an empty trash can and be like, okay, whatever is higher than that is what they have. Okay? Oh, this is a really messed up computer. I'm gonna have to type them. All right. Now, inferential statistics. These are statistics used for prediction. Okay, let me throw in some more on here. So descriptive statistics, I'm going to throw out a bunch of terms that I haven't taught you yet, but when you're going back to your study for the final, these are going to make sense to you. So mean, standard deviation, median, things like that. Inferential statistics, we're going to talk about p-values, confidence intervals, hypothesis tests. Okay, and I'm not going to define those today. We will define those over time. But yeah, so we're also going to talk about categorical variables and quantitative. Well, maybe I should do that, variables. Categorical, sometimes these are also called qualitative. Qualitative variables, okay? So categoricals, variables usually have a name associated. Things like race, class, standing, you know, make of a car, those kinds of things. Where quantitative are numbers. Okay. So let's go back to here. We've established that we've got 3 variables. So major, let's pick on, let's see here. I already picked on Cade. James, is that you? James, major, would you say that's a qualitative or quantitative variable?
I don't know, I'm gonna guess.
Quantitative? Because quantitative sounds like a number, right? Is major a number? No. So it would be a qualitative or a categorical. Do you like categorical better? Because you can see that major, I've got categories here, right? Okay. All right. How about points? Let's ask Sandra. Points would be?
No,
Can't hear you.
the point. It will be quantitative.
Quantitative. Very good. And grade. Jordan.
It's qualitative because it's language.
See, yeah, grade's kind of interesting. Qualitative. We could say we've taken these numbers that are quantitative and we've turned them into qualitative, right? We've assigned a value to them. Okay.
So you're saying the grade letter would be qualitative. If you put the percentage they received, it would be quantitative.
The grade would be, so I'm trying to remember, I'm getting my books mixed up here. I'm gonna give you a little bit more information here. When we talk about quantitative variables, you can do arithmetic on them. Okay? So that's the main thing. Now, let me ask you something. What if we put in here a zip code? Okay? Rather than make up zip code. So would zip code, that's a bunch of numbers, right? At least in the United States. Is that a qualitative variable or a quantitative variable?
Qualitative.
It's qualitative, right? You're not going to do math on a bunch of zip codes. It wouldn't make any sense. Okay? How about the number on a football jersey? Would that be qualitative or quantitative? Quantitative, you add up Steve Young with Jerry Rice and you win the game, right? Is that what happens?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
If that was true, everybody'd be number 1,000, right? Okay, so the number on a football jersey, even though it's a number, you can't do arithmetic on it, right? Or you could, but it wouldn't make any sense to do that. Okay, so that would be a qualitative variable. Okay, so we got to be a little bit careful, and maybe I should take off the numbers, but if you can do arithmetic on it, it's a number, right? So it would be a little bit harder to do arithmetic on our grade column, right? Even though they're kind of related to numbers. Okay? All right, so all right, let's talk about types of graphs. Types of graphs. Okay? And we're going to talk about a pie graph. Okay? Pie graph is used for categorical data. Okay? We're going to talk about a line graph, which is used for time data. We're going to talk about pictograms. Okay, and here's what I'm going to say about pictograms. Never, I'm going to use all caps here, use pictograms because it distorts the data. Okay, now, let me tell you what I mean by a pictogram. Okay, pictogram. Okay, so here's an example of some pictograms. We've got health in numbers, doctors available per 1,000 people. Rather than putting a graph there, we put these nice artistic people there, right? Okay? You will never do that in my class unless you want to get a bad grade. Okay? James, you want a bad grade? You'll never do that, right? Okay, so this is another one here. Oh, isn't that nice? We've got a half a cupcake here. Or is that a quarter? I can't tell. Right? Very artistic, great for kids. I will tell you this, I teach a math 2010 class. I hope I never teach that class again. It's all a bunch of school teachers. It's school teacher math. And their book says that pictograms are okay, and I'm like, they're not okay. Don't ever do it. But, you know, for kids, I guess it's okay, but we're in college now. We don't need to do that, okay?
So do you think pictograms are a step to learn? Like when kids have such a strong symbol recognition to numbers and trying to teach them that concept.
But look at this bus that's cut in half. Just killed a bunch of kids. That could traumatize children, couldn't it?
Well, in order to get them to stats 1040, how would you teach them that concept?
Yeah, you can do that in my 2010 class, but never do that, okay? Never do that for any of my classes, okay? It's cute, it's nice, and maybe it's a good conceptual thing for a kid, but we're in college. We're not doing that. Okay? Yeah. So USA Today graphs has some of the worst graphs ever known to man. How do you like this one? Isn't that artistic though? Isn't that a terrible graph though? If you're really trying to look at this. I mean, it's artistic. I'll grant that to you, but you know, USA Today, horrible. Oh, here we go. The piggy bank there. Okay. It's artistic. I'll give it to you, but don't ever do that. Okay. All right. So let me show you how to make some good graphs here. Let's say, for example, in fact, should we collect some data? Let's collect some data. Okay, I'm going to open up a new tab here, and I want to know the number of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors we have. Okay? So, actually, this brings up another term, which is called a frequency distribution. Okay? Oh, that doesn't underline. Frequency distribution is a list of each category and occurrence. Okay? So let's say, for example, here, I wanted to know the number of freshmen we have in our class. If you're a freshman, could you raise your hand? Oh, no? None? Sophomores? 1, 2, 3. Juniors? 1, 2, 3. Seniors? 1, 2, 3. We've got more than 9 people in this class. Whoops. Who didn't raise your hand? Other? Your other? Other 1. Have we only got 10 people here? Somebody still didn't raise your hand. We've got 2 others, clearly. Okay, so my question to you, so you can think of this here, I've just counted up everybody. This is your frequency, the frequency of use, okay? Oh, let me throw out something else back here. I'm going to insert a line. Oh, let me show you how to insert a line. So underneath pi on line 12 here, I'm going to right click and then I'm going to say insert. And I've also got bar graph. Bar graph is used for categorical data as well. Okay? Now the difference between a pie graph and a bar graph is the pie graph must add to the entire set. Okay?
My graph must add to the entire set.
Yeah, set such as 100%. Okay? So a lot of times you can use pie graphs or bar graphs. If you guys were going to graph this data, say for a final project, and I were to pick on, let's say, did I pick on Jordan already? Jordan? Yeah. Oh, I didn't pick on you. Alexander.
Yes.
What kind of a graph would you pick for this?
I pick a pie graph.
You'd pick a pie graph here. Okay? All right, so that's a good choice. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to highlight our data and make sure that you highlight your categories. Sometimes people like to ignore the categories, but I say don't. Include everything in there. So if you just click and drag, you should be able to highlight everything. And then we can say insert. And then over here, you can see we've got a pie graph here. Oh, do you see that 3D pie graph? Never ever use it. Okay? Ever. Now, some of you on the final project, this is being recorded, okay? Don't ever use 3D on the final project or you'll get marked down. Okay? It's very artistic. It also distorts the graph. You should only do 2D graphs, okay? And the nice thing is, look at that. It has freshmen. Why are my freshmen? They should be 0. Oh, I guess we got 2 blues. That's a light blue, that's a dark blue. Okay, that's the other, okay? Now, do you like my title there? Isn't that a terrible title? Okay? So if you click on the word frequency, you can say class standing in math 1040. And when you press enter, what happened? Oh, it's just slow. This computer's out of space. I'm gonna have to call the help desk. Okay? Maybe we'll use another room because this computer's not very good. Okay, so this is a great pie graph. Okay? So this adds up to a whole. Let me say in this case, we're going to do it again. This time we're going to make a bar graph. Okay? So we're going to go to insert. We're going to click on this one here. Only do not use the 3D. It's ugly. I don't care what you think, it's ugly. Okay? Always do 2D graphs. And remember, this is being recorded. So when you do a 3D graph on final project, because you forgot this day, I'll say, remember back on June 26th, I told you, and it's recorded. Okay? Don't ever do that. Okay? Yeah, it's on the video. This will be on the video. Okay? Now, once again, let's ask for, I just picked on Alexander. How about, I've already picked on her. Aaron, do you remember how to change the title?
Double click it.
Just actually, you only need to click it one time. Okay? And then start typing. Class standing in math 1040. Now, which graph do you like better in this case?
Bar.
Probably the bar. Why do you like the bar better?
Because it has more of like a better representation of what has more what.
Because it has a better representation of what has more what?
Yeah. I can know, like, I can see better what.
Okay, that's not the greatest explanation, though. You're right. I like it better, but why?
See how they compare to each other.
You can see how they compare to the, I mean, you can see how they compare to each other, but notice we've got 4 categories here and I've got 5 here.
Oh, yeah.
What do you notice about the freshmen?
Not represented.
Yeah, there's no freshmen in the class, and it's kind of hard. We thought the freshman was this one instead of this one. That's the other group, because they're kind of the same color. Okay? Now you can change your colors, by the way. In fact, if I were to change that, I'm trying to remember how to change it. So if I click the blue, and if I go to paint, fill, I'm going to change that to, instead of blue, I'm going to change that to red. Ooh, I changed the whole thing. Didn't mean to do that. Now, have I told you how to undo things? Control Z. Okay, in fact, I'm going to do this. Control Z equals undo. Control Y equals redo. Control X equals cut. Control C equals copy. And Control V equals paste. Okay, you'll like those. Those will come in very handy for you. Okay, now the nice thing about the X, C, and the V, they're all next to each other on your keyboard. X, C, and V are all next to each other on your keyboard, so you can kind of remember that way. Okay, so going back to here, slide this over here. Hopefully I can just select the blue only. Okay, now do you see how I've only got the blue selected? Now if I go back to the paint bucket and I can change this to red. Now that one's red. Now that's easier to tell that freshman's blue. I don't have any blue up here. Now I've only got others red. Does that make sense? Now, by the way, I'm going to have you guys do an M&M project, and you're going to have colors, red, blue, yellow, orange, and it'll make red green, and it'll make orange blue, and that's how you fix that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. All right, so now let me do another graph here. We're doing really good on time. Let's say that I had state and tax rate. And I had Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Idaho. Okay. And so the tax rate is 6.5%, 6%, 7.5%, 5.3%, and 4.5%. Okay. Now let me ask you, how about, I just picked on Aaron. Oh, we get to start over? Have I picked on everybody?
Not yet.
Did you not turn in your quiz?
The one of today?
The one
Yeah.
from today, yeah.
Yes, I did.
You turned it in? I'm not seeing it.
Well, it's got 100%, that's the reason why you can't find
Is
it.
your name Philip?
Oh.
I don't have your quiz because I would have called on you. I think I called on everybody else.
Actually.
Well, that's why you're getting a 0 today.
Oh.
Ah. You want to turn that in, I'll pick on you. It's a good thing. Is Aaron hogging your quiz? See, and then you would have come to class tomorrow and you said, how come I got a 0? And I said, because I didn't get a quiz. Okay, Philip, what kind of a graph would you use for this data set?
I can use the bar graph.
You'd use a bar graph?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good choice. Would you use a pie graph?
Yeah, I can use that too.
You could use that. Would that be a good idea?
Yes.
No.
No?
Why not?
Why not?
Why would a pie graph be a bad choice? Doesn't add up to 100%, right? Okay. What does it add up to? I don't even know. Oh, by the way, let me show you this. This is the auto sum button here. If you want to add up everything, it adds up to 29.8%. Okay. Now, will Excel let you make a pie graph? Yes. You can make a pie graph, but that would be the wrong choice. That would be a wrong answer. Okay. So a bar graph, that was your first choice, was the better choice. Can you tell me how to make a bar graph?
Highlight the whole thing.
Highlight the whole thing.
Go to bar mining.
Go to where?
Go to the bar. Go
Yeah.
to insert
Insert, there we go, insert.
and choose the bar.
Choose the bar graph right here.
Go to whatever you want from
Just the
this.
2D, you want to pick the first one, 2D, okay? Now, by the way, you know what I just remembered? Let's go back here for a minute. You know, when somebody's looking at this, they're going 3, 3.5, 2, 2.5. What does that mean? Now, you all know what it means because you were with me when we collected the data, but if a stranger were to walk in here, they might be confused what these numbers mean, right? Okay? So let me add back here on your vocab sheet here. Good graphs are properly labeled. Okay? And certainly this bar graph isn't labeled very well. Okay? So here's how we're going to label it. Okay? So I've got this highlighted here. Do you see this green plus sign here? You can click on it and it will say, do you want axis titles? Okay? So over here, what should I call this? Number of students, right? Don't just say students because students, these are the number of students, okay? So be descriptive. And down here, what should I replace that with?
States.
What'd you say? Or class standing? Oh, you were on the bottom graph. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I went back to this one. But we can do the same thing down here. How do you do that? I've already picked on Philip now. We're going to Dalton. Have I picked on everybody? I think I did. Dalton, how do I add axis titles?
Green.
Click on the green plus sign. Axis titles. And what do I put here?
Tax rate.
Tax rate. And down here,
This.
yeah, states. Okay. Now, there's another thing that I'm going to teach you guys, and it's called, I'm going to insert another line here, a Pareto chart, P-A-R-E-T-O chart. That is a bar chart in descending order. Okay. So as we look here, my tax rate is not in descending order, is it? Okay, it's very close to a Pareto chart. It's a Pareto chart is a bar chart. So how I change that is all I have to do is if I highlight my data, and then I go to data, and then I can say sort, and then it says, oh, do you want to use column headings? And if you have these in here, you can either do it by the tax rate, and I want it largest to smallest, not smallest to largest. Now, when I sort this, watch what happens to my graph.
You want smaller to largest?
I want largest to smallest. It's always from highest to lowest, okay? So I will turn this bar chart into a Pareto diagram, okay? So we can see that according to this table, Arizona has the highest tax rate, followed by Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Idaho, okay? So that's how you can turn a bar chart into a Pareto chart, okay? All right, so I'm going to rename this bar pie. Okay, now let's say that I'm going to open up a new sheet here, and I've got some data here. This is the date, and we're going to do, watch this, we're going to put January. Okay, now here's what's pretty cool about Excel, unless you don't want it to do it, and then it's not cool. Okay, if you highlight January here, and I'm going to put this right on the corner right there. Okay, so it's that little cross, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag, and it will add all of the months. Is that not cool or what? Okay, so it will count the months for you. And then I'm going to put the price.
So
milk.
Google Sheets as well, or is that just not comparative?
Google Sheets probably, I think it does. Google Sheets isn't quite as good as Excel, but it's pretty good. Okay, and so price of milk, 222, 233, I'm going to get rid of the decimal point, 44, 255, 244, 243, 232, 245, 267, 288, 289, 295. Okay? All right, so now we're going to pick on, we just picked on Dalton. Chandler, what kind of a graph would you use for this?
I'd probably just use a bar graph.
You'd use a bar graph. Now let's go back and check here. Bar graph is used for categorical data. Line graph is used for time data. Is this time data? Ah. So you could make a bar graph, but a better choice would be a line graph. Okay, so anytime you have something to do with time, okay, now I'll bet you, we'll stay on you, Chandler. I'll bet you could figure out how to make a line graph. Okay, how would you do that?
Highlight it,
Go to insert.
go over to the charts.
And this one right here is your line graph right here. And are we going to do a 3D line graph?
No.
No. Okay. Trained you well. Okay. All right. Now, do I need to add axis titles for this? Probably not, because I've got dollars here. If I didn't have dollars here, I'd probably do that. And these are months. That's pretty obvious. But if you want to be super safe, because you never know, I might take off points, what would you put here? Price in dollars. Maybe we could say US dollars, because maybe we're comparing it to England or something. And month. Okay. Now, since I picked on Chandler, how about Christian? Christian, do you notice any sort of trends with this data?
Well, not.
Yeah, so you could say this has an upward trend. Okay. Price is generally increasing over time. Okay. It did go down. If you want to be, from January to April it went up, and then from April to July it went down, and then it went back up. I mean, you could be even more like that. All right. Now, let me show you another line graph that will trip up some people. Okay. What if we were doing year, and we went from 1991, 1992, oops, 1992. Now, if you want it to keep counting up for you, highlight both of those, because if I highlight just one, it will just put 1992. Control Z to undo, but if I highlight both of those, it will say, oh, I think there's a pattern going on. We're going to do that. Okay, it'll count for you. Okay? Now we'll do number of deaths or something. I don't know. 2,000, 20,000, 2019, 950, 21,003, whatever. 33,000, 2,000. 21, 257, I don't know, whatever. 35,000, 20,000, 25,000, whatever, and 10,000. Okay, whatever. All right, now this one's a tricky one. I'll just warn you. Cade, how would you make, or what kind of a graph would you pick first of all?
Since it's going in time, it'd be a line.
A line graph. Okay, now this one's going to be tricky. But go ahead and tell me how you think you should make a line graph.
Highlight it all, and
Highlight your data.
Insert.
Insert.
Go to the line graph.
Go to the line graph. 2D line. Yep. What happened? It's graphing my years, and I don't want it to graph my years, right? Okay. So this is probably going to happen to you on the test in the testing center, and you're going to need to know how to fix this. And some of you will say, oh, I don't know what happened to my graph. For some reason, it's graphing both of these. And I'll be like, gosh, I don't know. So they talked about that in class. How do you fix that? Here's how you fix that. Okay, I'm going to delete it first. We want those years to be a text. So if you put an apostrophe before the year, watch what happens to this 1991 when I press enter. It moves it over to the left side, and it puts that little green thing there, and it says, if you hover over that.
You format the whole row to do that?
Yeah, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do that for the first two, and then Excel is going to be smart, and it's going to be like, oh, yeah. Okay? Now, when we do what Cade said, we're going to insert our graph. It's going to be a line graph. And now it graphs the way we wanted it to. Okay? So we need to add in some axis titles. What should I put over here? How about James?
Was it number of deaths?
Number of deaths. And down here I can put year. And what would you want to put up here for your title? People who took Bennett's 1040 class.
And
Right? You think that's a true graph? All right. It's fun when you're playing with data, right? Yes, Aaron. How did I do what? You put an apostrophe in front of before you type the data. Okay, yes.
How do you make your graph the computer smart because it's not working for me?
It's not working for you. Let's see.
Maybe
Did you put an apostrophe in?
I did, but I cannot like do the years. I don't know how to do all the years.
Okay, so let's see if you go right here in the corner. Right, you look in the graph. Question? Question? Are we good? Sorry. Okay. All right. So this is a good thing to do. I know some teachers like you to practice on paper and pencil. I'm never, in fact, they kind of make you do that in my 2010 class. And I'm like, nobody ever wants to see a graph hand-drawn. I use a computer. This is what you're going to do. Okay? Now, let's talk about how to distort graphs. Okay? Now, let's go back here to the price of milk. Okay? One thing that I can do is I could distort this graph. Now, this is I'm turning a good graph into a bad graph. But what I could do is, notice this is pretty flat line here, but what if you double click over here on the dollars here, I'm going to change the minimum to $2. Okay? And now look at how steep that price increase is. Can you believe how much the price of milk has gone up? Do you see how that distorts the graph? Okay? I changed, instead of starting at 0, it starts at $2 here. You see that? So if you double click on the numbers here, you can change your minimum from 0 to $2 or whatever. Does that make sense? Okay. So most graphs should generally start at 0 so that you don't distort your data. Going back to here, if I went back to my bar pie graph here, okay, I could once again do the same sort of a thing. I could make it look like Idaho. In fact, we're going to start this at 0.05. Okay. Now it looks like Idaho has no tax, right? Do you see that? Like Idaho doesn't have a tax because theirs is at 4 or lower than 5. Okay. So make sure that you don't distort your data. Okay. In fact, that reminds me of, let me show you this. Jason Chaffetz's abortion graph. Okay. Now this happened about, what, 2 years ago? What do you think of this graph? Okay. This was a graph that Jason Chaffetz added to a congressional hearing, and basically what he said was, look at this, Planned Parenthood, you are such an awful organization, look at this. Your cancer screenings have gone down, and the number of abortions have gone up. Why would you be such an evil organization and do such a thing? Okay, that's basically what he said. Okay, our illustrious congressman from Utah. Now, do you see anything wrong with this graph? Or who thinks this is a good-looking graph? Who thinks it's a terrible graph? Okay. Why do you think it's terrible?
Look how different the numbers are. You have 2 million, you have 2,800.
Yeah, did you know that 935,000 is a smaller number than 327,000? Did you know that? Not in my math class. Okay. Now, he's got no scale on here, right? Let's see, is this the right one? If he were to have drawn that properly, this is what the graph would look like. Abortions are flat. They've gone up a little bit, but they're pretty flat, right? Cancer screenings have gone down. But this flat line is certainly a far cry from this line here.
Is that a proper graph? I mean, is that?
No, it's not.
Okay.
So two things to notice about this. Number one, there's no scale here. Somehow 327,000 is greater than 935,000 in Jason's world, I guess. Okay. But he was trying to say, look, abortions are up at Planned Parenthood, cancer screenings are down. Do you know why cancer screenings went down? There's actually a good reason for that.
Is it covered with healthcare now?
No.
They changed the age?
The American Cancer Society said, because you know, these are women who are going, and women get breast cancer a lot more than men do, that's for sure. And so the problem is, a woman's feeling her breast, oh, I've got a lump, I better go to the doctor. The doctor says, I don't know what that is, but let's just cut it off because, you know, it could be cancer. And so we were naming all of these women who did not have cancer. So the American Cancer Society said, unless you have a history of cancer, you should not be having your breast cut off. And so they were following medical guidelines. And that's why they went down. But you can see abortions are basically flat here. They have not really, they've increased a little bit, but comparison, no, not at all. Okay? So once again, that's another way to distort graphs. And the other thing is that I will say, Cecily Richards was in the thing, and somebody whispered in her ear and said, oh, Americans United for Life, that's an anti-abortion group. You might want to check your source. Do you think they would have any reason to inflate the number of abortions at Planned Parenthood? Okay? So you need to be careful about your source. You need to be careful about distorting your data, which clearly is what they did. Okay? So this is a misleading and ethically wrong graph. Okay? So this happens. So on your quiz, I'm probably going to be asking you if graphs are good or bad. So make sure that you're paying attention to things like scale, okay? A properly scaled graph would look something like this. And notice also they're not straight lines. I mean, that's pretty straight, but this one's not a straight line. Whereas those are perfectly straight lines. Obviously an accurate graph, right? Okay. Let me see here. All right, now we've talked a little bit about these kinds of graphs. We're actually moving faster than I thought. Okay, let's talk a little bit about histograms. Histograms, okay, these are very important graphs. Okay, histograms are like bar graphs, but here's the differences, okay? Number one, we use numerical categories. Two, categories must be equally sized. Three, categories should not overlap. And number four, the bars must touch, okay? Now I'm going to tell you this is going to be probably one of the hardest graphs that we will do, okay? As we do this, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Oh, this is going to be a very useful tool for you here. Let's pretend I have some data here, and I'm going to make some random numbers, okay? This will be very useful. I know yesterday, was it 2 days ago? No, it was yesterday. I taught you how to use the random number table. Okay, today I'm going to teach you how to make random numbers yourself without a table, okay? What is that? So the rand between, okay, we're gonna pick random numbers between, I already picked on James. Sandra, give me a number, any number. 5, and give me another number that's higher than that.
7.
No, a big number.
32.
32. Okay, we've got random numbers between 5 and 32. Okay, now I'm going to copy this down. We're going to have a bunch of numbers. Maybe if this computer doesn't crash on me. Oh my gosh. We can't use this room again.
Sorry, that other room was currently being used.
This one over here. There's 3 rooms here. We'll
Well, I
try.
know, but at 9:30, the other one wasn't being used. We had like 3 people in
Oh. What happened? Yours is probably working. I don't know why my screen turned black. There we go. Okay, that was weird. All right, now the problem is when you get a bunch of random numbers, every time you type, the numbers keep changing. That's kind of a pain, right?
So you just had it generate random numbers on its own.
Yeah, these are random numbers, and every time I type, it generates new random numbers. What's that? I can't hear you.
How did you get the random numbers?
Yeah, so the command is equals rand between. You can double click on that, and then we picked 5, 32. Okay. Now, so here's how you get the numbers to quit changing. Okay. So go ahead and highlight all your data, just like that. Okay. You're going to right click, and you're going to say copy. Was that too fast? Maybe I should save histograms for tomorrow. You guys are going to get blown away anyway.
I'm just not familiar with how to do this on Excel.
Yeah. I feel like I'm rushing on this. Tell you what, we'll save histograms for tomorrow. I didn't finish chapter 1 yet. Because